but that are also thinking in the space of how young people are involved in kind of combining social justice alongside the imperative of honoring the ancestors. So first, I will introduce Dee Henderson, who is currently an instructional tutor at Acute Academy. He is also an influencer in his community and a professional athlete. His personal brand as an influencer is on Instagram at D from Oakland. His goal is to change the direction of his community by teaching the importance of our history and communication. He wants to help underprivileged families receive the basic resources one needs to function in everyday life, such as food, clothes, shelter, etc. His most impressive achievement is graduating from Mississippi Valley State University after dropping out of high school in the 10th grade. So welcome, Dee.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Good afternoon, everyone. Again, my name is Michael Jackson, and I have the distinct pleasure of introducing our second panelist, which is Pele Ogun Sheye. And I'm going to share his bio pretty quickly. So he cultivates a longevity through the art of Capoeira, because he believes that once humans are well, we begin to construct healthier societies. He fell in love with Capoeira in 2006, and through it was empowered. His Capoeira experience supercharged his vision to improve the Black community, much like what the older masters of the art did in the past, to reintroduce itself to be self-reliant, sustainable, and community-centered. Culture back into the Afro diaspora. He began sharing the art in 2014 and since have been honored with 5 awards for communal recognition and international performances. He goes on to say, this path has led him to create an award-winning documentary about group economics and write a book distilling the practices of Afro-diasporic arts, a language we can unify within. He calls this practice the Black Rites, and his slogan and challenge to everyone is frequent the frequency.
So welcome to both of you. And we're going to get started with our first question that we want to open up the space with, which is, if each of you in about a minute can give us a quick snapshot into who you are, your background, and particularly the impact of that having an HBCU experience has had on your life and on your perspective on Black liberation. So we can start with Dee.
Okay. Hi. Again, my name's Daniel Henderson, aka D. I grew up in East Oakland, California. I was raised by a single mother of 6. I take pride in my journey because, like I said, I dropped out of high school in the 10th grade due to a lack of knowledge. But a couple years later, I got my GED at EOYDC, East Oakland Youth Development Center. A couple years after that, I enrolled into the College of Alameda, where I received my AA degree in sociology, humanities, and liberal arts. And immediately after that, I enrolled at Mississippi Valley State, where I received my BA in speech communication. And now I'm excited for the next part of my life. As far as the HBCU experience, that kind of started at College of Alameda. I was blessed to have a brother on campus by the name of Charles Washington. He saw something in me and he said, brother, I think you can really benefit from this tour. Before the HBCU tour, I had no plans of going to a university. When I went on that HBCU tour, everything that I saw completely opened my eyes. I went to the African American History Museum in Washington, D.C. Very powerful experience. It was the first time I ever heard about the Emmett Till thing. I got to see his casket, and a lot of that was truly eye-opening. After I seen all that, I made my mind up. I was definitely going to attend an HBCU. And like I said, I just graduated. So that's a little bit about me.
Congratulations. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right, Pele, you can answer that same question. Do you need to repeat it? Or are you ready?
Can you repeat it for me one more time?
Sure.
Yeah, no problem. It's just we just want to open with a quick snapshot into who you are, your background, and also what impact having an HBCU experience has had on your outlook on life and politics, etc.
All right, so quick snapshot. I am currently an electrician following in the lineage of Booker T. Washington to use industrial education to liberate Black people. I did go to Tuskegee University to study mechanical engineering. I really, really appreciated my experience at Tuskegee University. It was the first time that I found like-minded people around Black liberation, as well as just being introduced to a lot of concepts that I had never been introduced before, because the school system that I went to kind of like, you know, pretty much all of our school systems filter out information. And so it was the first time that information was just pretty much unlimited and I was able to grasp everything. It's also the place that bred my love for capoeira, because I saw what the conditions in which capoeira was created in. Tuskegee itself is very similar to a maroon colony, or quilombo is what they call it in Brazil. And I was able to cultivate a pretty impactful organization out there with the power of capoeira, and being able to use that work to re-Africanize the college students that were there. And I stayed there a little longer than normal just because I wanted to continue to uplift the community, not only in Tuskegee, but try to do some work in Montgomery and the surrounding areas as well. That's actually how I met Mike Jackson. Big bro.
Appreciate that. Thank you, brother. For the second question for the panelists, what has honoring the ancestors meant to you throughout your life? And how do you infuse honoring the ancestors via your gifts, your talents, skills, everyday living?
Well, to start off, like I said, I recently got connected to the history in 2016. It's weird to say, but at the College of Alameda was the first time I learned about African history and everything that our people went through. I know it's sad to say, but it was the first time I ever heard about it. So I'm still recently getting connected with the whole information. But ever since I've been woke up to it, it's been extremely powerful in my life. And as far as using it in my gifts, I'm a poet and I also write music. So I definitely make sure I put that in my content. And if we have a little time after the panel discussion, in, I may do a little piece to answer that question more in depth.
I'm in full support of doing that at the end of the panel. But the practice of capoeira itself is an ancestral practice. The products of the Ma'afa ultimately created this product of the Ma'afa, which is the capoeira that we use. So every day I pretty much reflect by just doing the movements and honoring them with my sweat and commitment to the art, to make sure that I pass on the tradition exactly as it should. One of the great elders of capoeira told me that if I was to teach capoeira, I need to teach it like a drum maker makes a drum. Make sure every piece on the drum is perfect, so that if the drum doesn't sound well, he knows it's not his fault. It's the drum player. So I try to, make sure I work with my elders so that I can better understand the ancestors that I am also paying homage to. As well as living in the light of Booker T. Washington, again, with the electrician thing, and really trying to bring kids, the youth, in to let them know that they don't have to go into debt just to be educated. What they can do is actually make six figures by doing industrial education. That's plumber, electrician, carpentry, whatever that may be, and build your own business and operate in that way. I mean, that's ultimately what quilombos are made of, are people who are able to have skills that can build a community and then also protect that community that you build. What I found with doing that work is that if you give people responsibility to their community, they're more likely to protect it instead of allowing people to just come in and do whatever they want with it.
Powerful.
Very, very true. And thank you so much for bringing up the history of quilombos, because, it's one of our parts of our history that is really one of our sites of living in historical resistance and survival, and the ways that we have done things for ourselves and have fought back against oppression on our own terms. And I think this past year or so of mobilization and protests from Black Lives Matter to protests in Brazil against anti-Black violence, to Colombia and across the globe, we've experienced not just a global pandemic in relationship to COVID, but the continued execution of Black people across the world. And of course, our ongoing mobilizations against that violence. And so I wanted to open up space, as two young people on a panel about young people, how has this past year, or at least a year, again, we're always tracing or connected to a longer history of anti-Black violence. How has this year in particular impacted you as individuals and in your community?
I know for me personally, before everything that happened a year ago, I never really saw color in people. Of course, I know I'm Black looking at my skin, that's obvious, but I never really looked at people as color. Whenever everything happened with the George Floyd thing, it was the first time I really looked at myself every day through the eyes of a Black man. And I actually shed a tear. Like, it actually made me cry, because, I'm real positive, I'm real uplifting. And the fact that just knowing that I'm a threat, just walking down the street to the store, it really brought awareness to me, and it really woke me up. So I think that's the way that I was impacted the most. I can definitely say, and it also allowed me to get more involved with the community. I'm really kind of an into myself type of person, but with all that was going on, I knew how I felt. My emotions was all over the place. So after I took some time to gather myself and get grounded, I was like, I want to know how my people feel about this. So, people were throwing protests at the lake and stuff like that. And I went out to check it out. And it was so powerful going out there. That was the first time I saw the impact that I truly have in my community. And so for me, it was definitely a life-changing experience with everything that goes on, because I never really looked at myself as like an influencer, but I have a lot of power and influence in my community, going back to the whole appreciation of the ancestor thing. And that's a responsibility that I have to grasp and take with full hands moving forward.
So this past year it was more traumatic for me because I was actually out in the streets during Ferguson. I took a trip with a couple of students from Tuskegee University, and we kind of went when I think it was Anthony Martin had passed at the gas station, and I saw like basically police dressing up in regular clothes, literally jumping into a car, changing clothes, and then jumping out the car and throwing riot grenades in the middle of the crowd as like things get chaotic. I was listening to the police officer saying like, I'm going to arrest me an N-word. I don't know if I can say that like on this thing. I'm going to arrest me an N-word today, and like really agitating me and get me upset. Like, I'm pretty sure I was like gonna go to jail if my friend was in there, and she like kept me from, doing anything that was a little bit too hot-headed. So, I really appreciate Black women for always keeping a cool head when things get hot like this. Also, during that time, I recognized that Black people have been pulled away from the Ogun energy, which is the warrior's energy, because we've been taught with instances like what Janine and Janet have expressed with the move and Tulsa, Oklahoma, that, if we try to do anything that is to stand up against the giant, then we will be torn down. Also, even in micro instances where over policing in communities or being told that, Black skin is just inherently violent, it keeps us from doing things like tapping into those moments where, I practice EFA, so a lot of my my analogies are going to associate back with the Orisha. But, you have the Divine Seven Orisha. And if you take one out, then, you are you're not completing the set of what Olodumare has basically bestowed upon us to be governed by. So with that being said, I feel like that's something that I really want to introduce back into our communities, is understanding that the warrior is not this aggressive, rageful thing, but it's also a protect and build thing. So this past year, sorry, I said all that to say to put into context. This past year, when it happened, I was a little bit annoyed because I recognized very similar patterns that happened in Ferguson. The police force is very weaponized in strategy and weaponized and overly weaponized with gear. And there's not enough tactics that go along in the community to understand how to be a warrior in those moments. And so sitting back, watching, the youth go out in the streets, really agitated me a lot. And you know, it tore me apart just to know that like I can't just go out there and start like trying to call cadence if they haven't been trained in this, you know? So it's just one of those things that I recognize that I have to do the work with capoeira so that you can understand what it's like to be in a warrior state of mind and also have a cool head. So when you get out into public and you are in protest, you know how to have a cool head in certain situations and be more strategic. And you can also recognize strategy, like when the police are flanking you from the right or flanking you from the left, and you can recognize these things. You can see how people position themselves. You can see how they build a wall and such forth. But I'll stop there.
Mm.
Y'all answer those questions beautifully. Thank you. Moving on to the next question. Why is it still important to honor the ancestors during this overwhelming time with so much going on? Why is it still important to connect to the ancestors?
I personally, I'm gonna sum it up with one word, which is Sankofa. It's a word that I learned in community college. Sankofa is basically a movie. I recommend everybody go watch it. It basically means to go back to your past so you can understand the present. And I had a personal experience that brought everything to life with that. After I graduated, I had the opportunity to drive down in Mississippi to the exact landmark where the Emmett Till thing happened at. So I actually stood on the soil where everything happened to Emmett Till at, and that moment was so powerful to me. But I brought that up because I had a moment where I woke up and it was like basically everything that's going on in my time today, it's not nothing new. And I was just I was flabbergasted because it was like all this stuff has been happening years ago. Like Emmett Till happened in 1950. You fast forward to 2021, you got George Floyd, you got Jacob Blake, you got Breonna Taylor, and I'm like yo, so this stuff has been going on. Like, and like I say, it just helped me understand my responsibility and the things that I want to do as a black man of color moving forward. Because I truly believe our history is our armor. The more that we know our history and the more that we intact to it, it's going to give us the inner strength and the inner power to do the necessary things that we need to do to move forward, to break free from the oppression that we've been living with for 400 plus years.
That was a bar right there. He said, "Our history is our armor, yo." Like that's what's up. I rock with that. I mean, that's very similar to how I understand it. I think that it's important to honor our ancestors during these overwhelming times because when things get a little bit inconvenient, you don't want to lose your identity and your practices and your rights, rites, rights, rituals, because that is, you know, what humans are ultimately rooted in, our identities, how we understand the world, what's been passed on to us. This is how we connect to make sure we usher in that armor into the future. We can't do it if it's disconnected or severed. So the deeper the roots, the stronger the tree, the sweeter the fruits.
Very well said. Very well said. Both of you all need to say poems at the end of this. I hear them in development as you all respond. Well, actually, thinking about Sankofa, and I think what's powerful about this panel is that it's also coming after we had the conversation with our survivors our survivors and our elders of around MOVE and political prisoners, and the ways that if we understand the work that they were doing then and our ancestors have historically done, it's always been about liberation and trying to create free Black life and liberated Black life and Black consciousness. And I think the definitions of what we understand of Black liberation has constantly changed across time and across space. But I wanted to give you all an invitation to think aloud with us, what does Black liberation look like, or is needed today, and particularly what is kind of the role of honoring the ancestors, remembering the ancestors, and crafting a vision of Black liberation?
Okay, to answer that question, I'm gonna keep it simple. And I know this from my own experience. I basically grew up disconnected from my own family. When I began to study African culture, not African American, African culture before we was brought to this land, our foundation was each other. our foundation was family. And to answer the question, I think we need to go back to those. We need to go back to those days. Like it kills me inside, like when everything was going on last year, and you walk past, another black individual, and yet we mugging each other. It's like, how you mugging me? We don't even know each other. You know what I mean? So I think we need to take it back to the days where we all need to unite and come together. I've had this thought for a long time. Specifically here in Oakland, everywhere I go, you go to Chinatown, there's a China culture. There's their food, their customs, what they do. You go to international, you got the Mexican culture, their food and what they do. I'm like, why I can't go anywhere in the world and see black culture, black people, us success, us thriving. And so to answer that question, I think we need to come closer as a community, and like we need to have our own. We need to have our custom, our cultures, us having stores, us having restaurants and wash houses and things of that nature. Kind of like how Black Wall Street was. We kind of need to bring something like that back. And again, just remain tied to the history and the culture.
Can y'all repeat the question for me? I had police sirens running through the back right when you were asking.
That's also interesting because most, how police always anticipate Black liberation and show up in unexpected moments. But the question, the question was, how would you, or how do you define or envision Black liberation, and what is kind of the role of honoring the ancestors and remembering the ancestors in crafting a vision for what Black liberation could and should be?
Okay, so. Oh man, this is like the root of my work that I've been doing for the past like 6 years, and I'm gonna try to be as brief as possible. But I'm telling y'all, I got lungs, so be ready. So I'll start with saying that, witnessing what was built in Tuskegee and realizing where it was and where it's come to was one of the things that awakened me to like a Sakanfa moment where I was like, I looked back and I looked forward and I'm like, yo, what's up? It's a disconnect here. Watching what Assata Shakur did with the BLA, again, the move, being inspired by Tulsa, recognizing that Tuskegee is actually what inspired Tulsa Greenwood community, because Greenwood, or Dr. Green, who was a professor at Tuskegee, is the one who they named Tulsa after Booker T. Washington came up and visited all those Black millionaires up there and told them to continue. There's a three-pronged approach that I believe, or pillar approach that I believe that we should do, and to make sure that we're honoring our ancestors. I personally am walking in the light of Marcus Garvey and Booker T. Washington as far as how to unify people and what they did and the work that they did. It inspired me so much that like I could only envision using the platform of Capoeira to do it, because Capoeira was built out of the quilombos, and quilombos are very similar to what we built when we were building Tulsa and Greenwood and Tuskegee and Hamptons and so forth. So my three pillars are, the first pillar is education, industry, and service. That's all Booker T. He believed in the education, he believed in building industries, and he believed in servicing the people. I personally believe that that is the way. Education, not as in like just going to school, but just consistently reading and learning and making sure that you're opening your mind to new things, learning new languages so you can connect to the diaspora across the way. Like even fala Portuguese, pequenininho, like just a little bit of Portuguese, or a little bit of whatever. Also, so the second pillar is policy, property, and patents. One of those being patents that I really want to harp on is because when before the Tulsa bombing happened, Black men were the number one group of people that were putting in patents in America. Economists say that basically there's like 4 or 3 initial ways to build an economy, and now there's a 4th, and that's called innovation, because they're recognizing it through Silicon Valley. Basically, they're making the money off of patents. Imagine all the money that we stopped receiving because we were afraid that the government would protect our patents because of what they did to Tulsa. So then we started using Native Americans as well as white people to go, and we'll say we're the research assistant so that we could just sell our products. But it was legally in their name, so they got all the profits from that, and we just got a little bit, right? So there's like billions of dollars that's lost in our communities just because we are not actually contributing to the patent service. Property, we already understand land ownership and policy. When you own these things and you have an industry, For instance, look at Facebook. Facebook is just a social media network, but it has an audience with the government. So when you start pushing your industry to the limits, they want to have an audience with you, and then you control the narrative and how people engage with the reality of America. So what are we doing to build powerful industries that actually matter for like building what we want to see as Wakanda or the Greenwood, right? Like, what do we need? We don't need new t-shirt companies. We don't need fitness instructors. We don't need none of that. If you go and work as an electrician or a carpenter, you're gonna get that fitness anyway. Okay, I'm not. Let me get off of that. So the last one is lineage, longevity, and legacy. So this is where it connects back to the ancestors, because the guidance of like how we navigate this space, our elders, tomorrow's ancestors, know better than we do as far as like what the evil forces are capable of doing. We don't know. We're very naive. I've learned the hard way, having my encounters just on the back roads of Alabama, recognizing that white people have some pretty cruel ways of dealing with just people on a regular basis. So we have to make sure we honor our elders now so that we can have a relationship with them even when they pass to become ancestors. So when you are giving them their offerings, you're giving them the offerings that they actually care to receive, right? Like, you know, somebody's Uncle Ray Ray, he might like Paul Masson whiskey. Let's say Uncle Nearest for the fact that that's, you know, black owned. Uncle Nearest, right? And so you put that on the ancestor altar, he's gonna do some real magic for you when it's time to get into that, you know, when you get your back against the wall. So I think that that's important. Longevity is important because the longer we live, we're able to not only accumulate more wealth, and that's just scientifically proven, or that's statistically proven, but we can then pass that wealth on and also be here long enough to guide the youth even later in their age, so that we can make sure that the missions that we set forward don't just die because we die young, because we have diabetes, because we, you know, have like all these comorbidities that are making us susceptible to COVID. And then legacy is what you do with the youth. And apparently I'm the youth. I love to know that like my age is considered youth now, because that fits right along with longevity. So I'm happy about that.
That's cool.
Well, guys, y'all did an awesome job. Beautiful job. Thank you for sharing y'all experiences and how to stay connected to the ancestors and why it is important to remain connected to the ancestors. One quick thing before we exit this panel, Pele, would you share how they can view your documentary about group economics, and D, real quick, what you was gonna share, and then that wrap us up.
Yeah. So the documentary is actually on YouTube. You type in the Tuskegee Project Group Economics. It'll be the first thing that pops up. It has a white background and it says the Tuskegee Project on the white background. So just click that and enjoy. If you need the book, just go to my Instagram, which is at PELE, or it's my name. It's whatever's showing up right here. Just spell Pele Ogun and boom, I'll pop up.
Also, real quick, also share the Black Rights passage that you got real quick.
Share what now?
Could you hear me, Pele? The Black Rights.
Yeah, so Black Rights. That's the at Black Rights. So it's not Black Rights like RIGHTS. We already have that. Can't nobody give that to us, but it's rituals, unknown rituals, Black Rights, RITES.
Yeah. Thank you, brother. All right, D, take us out.
I got you. So you said your Instagram is just PELE. That's it, with a little dash at the E.
It's my name, full name, no dash.
Okay, first and last name. Okay. Got to make sure I follow you, bro. Okay.
I'm following everybody back, don't worry.
Okay. So this is something I wrote, I was just inspired by some research I was doing, and it just kind of flowed out. Open your eyes to the world lies. The world lies to deceive people. Disconnected our culture, and the result is we fail to see each other as equal. addition and multiplication. My rage is due to supplication and the fact everybody want to pretend like they started from the bottom when y'all never even smelled the basement. Bottom of the basement. Can we wake up to the fact everything deemed dangerous is somehow compared to the same way that they treat blacks? As in, slavery wasn't enough. Mental chains placed where they once locked on an ancestor from every individual sitting in this room, pretending that life is okay. Life is not okay. We have laws put in place that divide us by race every single day. I refuse to live my life placed inside of a box designed by somebody who doesn't even know what it's like to walk in my shoes for one day. I'm not gonna get mental because our issues are spiritual, and I'm not gonna get to walk in my shoes for one day. I'm not gonna get spiritual because our issues are mental and physical. I should not have to fight to love another individual when at the end of the day we're gonna need each other when times become critical. I'm more than just black in appearance. I'm more than just spiritual in spirit. I'm more than just continuing to sit and watch as the world slowly becomes another description of what the Bible describes as hell. It was another black man that took my innocence, had me scared to use my own voice. In a sense, it was a shame. Walking on eggshells early in my life. Life wasn't a game. Life was about pain. The same pain cut deep in veins from 400 years of misery and shame. Uh, we brothers and sisters, yet they make us robbers and killers. And so I pose this question. Who's going to be down for us? If we can't stand together as one, we're similar to a relationship where someone is cheated. It's already done. Thank you.
Oh, yay!
Thank you, brothers. Thank you, Jamila. This was a beautiful panel. As someone put in the chat, our futures is in good hands. So we want to encourage our brothers to continue to do the work that y'all do. Also bring in some more youth because we need all the hands we can get to, get this work done. Thank you. Oh yeah, Pele, put your information in the chat as well as D. All your websites, your platforms, and all that. Put it in the chat so people can get in contact, as well as the any information so they can stay in contact with you guys and all that you're doing.
In this chat or in the public chat?
The public chat.
Okay.
Either on Facebook or YouTube. All right. Thank you, brothers. Thank you, sister.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Bless everybody. Appreciate you guys for having us.
Turned again. Let's see. Yuri, I need some help. Am I introducing the tribute in honor of our African American veterans? Okay, thank you. On Veterans